Bill Carroll, Indy 16 Media, and happy holidays to all of those who celebrate, whether it be Christmas or Kwanzaa or Hanukkah or Festivus for the rest of us. And of course, this is bowl season, and bowl season gives you a chance to see players that you may have been scouting play against sometimes a different level of competition. Toledo has a couple of, sorry, yes, Toledo has a couple of players I really like. One of whom, two of them are in this draft, two of whom will have to wait their turn. My friend, shout out to my friend Mark down in Tampa St. Pete, Tucker Gleason, their quarterback, is a year away, so I'll have to wait for him next year. And Avery Smith, their best defensive back, is a former quarterback turned corner who is a terrific prospect who, once again, is a year away. Amongst players who are in this draft include Jerzon Newton, who's the younger brother, wide receiver of Johnny Newton, and he's the kind of guy that may or may not be drafted, but he's going to be in an NFL camp. I think he sticks on the team, makes his impact originally as a special teamer, and then fights his way onto the roster to play some actual wide receiver. He has enough suddenness. I don't know about great deep speed. He's probably a mid to low 4.5s guy, which is fine, and he's probably going to come in at 5'10" and 5'8" and 191 pounds. But once again, he doesn't win with size. He doesn't win with even pure speed. He's a good route runner. He has really good hands, and he's a tough guy. Despite being the biggest cat in the world, he's got a certain amount of toughness about him. The player is going to be drafted first, and the one that most people, if they are familiar with pro prospects on Toledo's team, the one that is probably the one of the greatest familiarity is Darius Alexander. Now, he hasn't always as dominant as a guy who has his physical profile maybe you would think would be, or maybe even should be, playing in the MAC. But he's going to come in at probably about 6'3" and a half, 306 pounds. He might run sub 5, maybe possibly sub 4.9. Probably have about 30 to 31 inch vertical. Test through the roof. 29 to mid 30s reps on the bench. He supposedly has, been repped out at over 400 reps, 400 pounds on bench, and is supposed to be somewhere in the 600 plus pound squat club. So he's a powerful young man. But once again, with all of that, he still isn't quite what you'd like to see on tape when you see him playing against that competition. Maxon Hook, Toledo, is a safety who I think will definitely make an NFL team, has a chance to be drafted late, maybe 6th round, possibly. And also they have another safety, Emmanuel McNeil-Warren. They're both safeties who might be box guys at the next level, but they show enough in coverage that you might be able to use them in sort of that agnostic three safety look where sometimes they're covering slots or tight ends, sometimes you're coming down the box, sometimes you're dropping deep middle. And of course, Pitt got off to a great start this season. The player that we feel very confident will be drafted probably early day 3 with an outside chance at day 2 if he really has a fantastic pre-draft process is Gavin Bartholomew, the big tight end. Probably going to come in at about 6'4" and 5'8", about 251 pounds. Probably going to drop a little below that to run the combine. So he might show up at the combine about 244, but he's going to play in the low 250s. Anything 4.72, anything slower than that makes him up. Slower than that's fine. Anything faster than that makes him money. Anything slower than about 4.79 hurts him a little bit. He's probably somewhere in that 4.73 to 4.79 range. But he's going to draw some Heath Miller comparisons just because Pittsburgh, the size, the playing style. I don't know if he's quite as nuanced in terms of his understanding of where to be on the field as even at UVA Heath Miller was. But that, I'd say, would be his ceiling. There are some other good defensive players on Pitt. I want to make it sound like Pitt has, no other prospects to mention. But that's the one that I can almost guarantee is going to be selected in the draft. Some of their better defensive prospects who I thought would be on the team this year found their way into the portal, and that's to be expected. That just happens. I mean, this is the modern landscape of college football. But there are some players who I think, if you're not quite sure sort of Testing, right? Once again, we talk about physical testing. It matters so much for players at certain positions, even more than at other positions. Obviously, at any of the outside positions, wide receiver, corner, things like, and to a lesser extent, running back, your physical testing is going to have an enormous impact on whether or not you are considered a draftable prospect. Donovan McMillan is a safety prospect who, once again, there is a chance, not saying will be, but there's a chance that he could be drafted. Things to remember about Donovan McMillan, things to know about Donovan McMillan. When he's out there on the field, the defense as a whole is better, right? There are better defenses as a whole when he's out there. Can he play at the next level? I would say yes. I think he has a chance to play at the next level. Partially, once again, because people play more safeties on the field at one time than they used to. He's probably going to come in at about somewhere between 6 feet and 7/8 and 6'1" and 3/8, probably somewhere in there. Eyeballing, I would say probably shade over 6'1", probably about 204 pounds. And once again was a pretty much a big time recruit coming in to there. Played early in his career, can bring it as a hitter. Has, I would say, above average hands, and once again, best part of his game is probably in the run game, which concerns you a little bit because at the next level, so much of the game is in the air. I think he's big enough, even if he's a box sort of hybrid guy, playing that sort of linebacker-ish role. Maybe he gets to about 211 to 214 pounds, which shouldn't be hard for him to do. That's only a gain of about 6 to 8 pounds for him. He's not super fast, either in a straight line or in change of direction. That's probably the biggest concern. He's going to have the kind of hips and feet that are elite. He's not a guy that's going to change direction on a dime, as they say. But athletic enough. He's not a bad athlete. And, Quentin Michael, for those who remember him in his days in the NFL, former Boise State player, found his way in the NFL with primarily the Eagles. Similar kind of player in terms of that. And then Counter Mumpfield, probably their best wide receiver. This year wasn't quite what I was expecting it to be. I thought it was going to be a big-time year, and it was an okay year. And he hasn't had the year people are expecting. He's probably going to come in at 182, 183, shade over 6 feet, 6 feet and a quarter to 6 feet and a half, and just didn't have a huge year. Only one drop in the year, so you feel good about that. He can create separation in his routes. I get the idea he's going to run the low 4.5s, which is plenty fast. Has a shot to be drafted. Ronnie Hammond, another guy had kind of a disappointing year. You look back at a guy like Israel Bazakonda, and you don't see that. He's not quite as powerful. He's not quite as fast. Going to come in at about 5'8 and 3/4, about 298 to 202 pounds. And he does, however, have that gear, right? Not quite Amos Zaraway. I know I'm dating myself, but look up Amos Zaraway. It reminds me of a slow. Take about 10 to 12% of the speed away, and reminds me of Amos Zaraway. Another Isaiah Peed, another sort of shorter, but a little smaller, but similar to a guy like Isaiah Peed. Nate Matlack, defensive end, is another player who, once again, there were expectations. There's expectations of everybody, but Nate Matlack was a player that we thought might sort of have a breakout like Habakkuk Baldonado did, right, where you are threatening, to be a guy that's about a sack a game, or almost a sack a game kind of player. And, when he gets to, or when he's at Kansas State, gets some idea of who and what he is. And then, you think of Pitt as a place where they really understand defense, right? They have a defensive personality, mentality, commitment, pick a term. But when he comes in, I was expecting more, I'll put it that way. Did not have a terrible year by any stretch of the imagination. But once again, not quite the year I was expecting. his biggest game in terms of tackles was 3 tackles. Biggest game in terms of sacks was 1 sack, and both of those were against Boston College. And so on the year, he has a total of 5 sacks. Now, once again, there's nothing terrible about the season he had, but just wasn't super productive. I think he's more like an undrafted free agent. Both these teams are teams that certainly deserve to be playing in the postseason. But oddly enough, I'm more excited about the Toledo prospects than about the Pitt prospects. Once again, I'll have 2 more bowl prospects for you today because there's 2 more bowls today. And what do you dump on somebody out of love of the game or whatever bowl game? Well, once again, look forward to talking to you again soon. And once again, yes, this is my favorite time of year, right? If you're a draft guy, this is the time of year that excites you most. And I'll see you again soon.